Rockets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. Of travel I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Good evening, Alaskans. Welcome to Oversight Live. I am Ben Carpenter. I am your host tonight. Oversight Live was created to help us understand what's going on down in our state capital, down in Juneau. For Alaskans, you know that the only way to get to Juneau is by air or by boat, by ferry. There's no road. For you, those of you that might be listening or watching from outside the state of Alaska, that means most Alaskans have a hard time getting to our legislature to provide oversight. It is cost prohibitive, both in time and money, to be able to do that. So until a road to Juneau can be built, Oversight Live will be your road to Juneau. Not having a road is a major inconvenience for us, but it is not a valid excuse for not understanding what's going on, because we've got technology. Technology allows us to watch and listen to the public record of what's going on down there. Now, that means our committee meetings are recorded and broadcast. That means our floor sessions are recorded and broadcast. But that doesn't necessarily mean we understand what's going on. Well, that's what I hope to help with. I spent several years down there. I spent 6 years in the legislature, to be specific. And I didn't know anything about the legislature when I showed up, other than what most people know. And through the 6 years, I've learned a tremendous amount. And I want to help impart that knowledge to you. So we're going to listen to some things, watch some things that I think are important that you need to know. I've asked in the past if there are things that you want to watch or want to learn about, let me know, and we'll do our best to bring that up and have that conversation. If you've got questions during the broadcast, we're broadcasting on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Go ahead and chat your question to me. I'll get it live here, and I'll do my best to answer the question. If you're watching the recording, then what you need to do is drop me an email, producer@oversightlive.com, and that will get you a question to me, and I'll do my best to answer the question on air. The whole goal here is to edify Alaskans, to increase our knowledge about self-government. The ultimate goal being to increase the pool of people who are wisely participating in our self-government. So that's what we're about. We're going to attempt to have some fun doing this too, because who wants to sit around and do something that's not fun? Well, I find enjoyment in watching and listening, learning, and teaching. So we'll do our best here to have some fun. So getting on to tonight, we've got two meetings that I think need to be broadcast, need to be discussed. I don't know that we're going to have time to get to both of them tonight. We may have to come back to one of them. We have Senate Resources we've been following closely. And today, Senate Resources took public testimony and public testimony from mayors of the boroughs and cities in the state of Alaska who wanted to weigh in on the committee substitute that for Senate Bill 280 that the committee adopted a couple days ago. So I think that that's kind of the priority right now, because it's as we said, the military, the flash to bang on this is really short. We really need to get a handle on this and stay on top of it. The other conversation I think everybody would like to hear about and would be valuable to us is a conversation in House Finance today that Office of Management Budget, OMB Director Sanders was present to help impart the information about deferred maintenance. We've had a little bit of a discussion here about deferred maintenance, and I think that meeting was a very good informational meeting on deferred maintenance, and helps paint a really a good picture from the government's perspective on what the problem is, or what they see the problem is with regard to deferred maintenance. And it would help us to watch that and understand what we're talking about when we're really talking deferred maintenance, right? So if we've got time, I'd like to jump over to that meeting. If not, then we'll probably postpone watching that for another night, because I think that when getting understanding where our elected leaders are subordinate, or not subordinate, but in different jurisdictions around the state with regard to what the Senate Resources has done with this bill, I think that's important, because now, there's additional people weighing in, and that can help us with our conversations and our influence in the legislature. Rick is, he didn't want to hear about deferred maintenance, I guess. I think it's an important thing, because deferred maintenance, that's every year it is thrown around as, hey, we don't have money for deferred maintenance, but deferred maintenance that's the whole reason that we have a large backlog of deferred maintenance and a big bill come due is because of prioritization within past year's budgets. It is more important for us to give raises or to create new programs, like giving out money for daycare, for example. That's a recent program add within the last 5 years that is increasing operational budget, and it is competing directly with the maintenance of capital of equipment and buildings and things like that we already have. So we're going to say yes to new programs and no to maintaining the things we have. So it's a prioritization problem. Legislature is going to make it as we don't have the money problem. Well, yeah, that's life. You never have enough money to do everything that you want, unless you're Elon Musk, I guess, and then you can do whatever you want. But I'm even at Elon Musk's level. He may have things he wants to do that he doesn't have enough money for, right? So even if you're more wealthy in life, there is a chance that you're just broke at a higher level. There's always something more that you don't have enough money for, and that's what our government is, right? It's a prioritization problem. It's not just a lack of money problem. Anyway, okay. Thanks for clarifying. You're just full of sarcasm tonight, Rick. Appreciate it. All right. Yes, I do have multiple hats. I wear multiple hats, literally and figuratively. I do a lot of different things. Jack of all trades, master of none. All right. Let's jump over to Senate Resources and get started tonight. And then if we've got some time, we'll jump over to House Finance and at least get the beginning presentation through from OMB on the deferred maintenance definition and what Office of Management and Budget is presenting as an informational briefing to House Finance. Problem is that the way that it gets laid out, there's questions from everyone, and that drags the briefing on, the meeting on, so that you can't just get the information from OMB. Anyway, let's get started with Senate Resources here.
Is Senate Bill 280, Oil and Gas Property Tax and Municipal Tax. Today we're going to talk with mayors and city managers and folks like that related to the potential impacts they might foresee related to a gas pipeline project. And near the end, if there's time, we also have members of the Department of Natural Resources online for questions related to their jurisdiction. We also have online from AGDC, Frank Richards and Matt Kissinger, it looks like. So starting out today, we're going to start with Mayor Chris Noel with the Denali Borough. Mayor Noel, can you hear us? Welcome. If you would introduce yourself for the record and give us your thoughts.
Okay, Chair Giesel, can you hear me okay?
Yes, very well.
Okay, thank you. Well, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify here on SB 280, the committee substitute. So I just, I'll start by saying this, we see this alternative volumetric tax as an important opportunity to enhance our current services and provide new services without imposing property taxes or raising existing tax rates. As you all likely know, we're the only municipality along the gas line without a current property tax. And so, we, under the previous, under an all or nothing proposition, the previous rate of 6 cents per 1,000 cubic feet, it appears workable. And I think the increase obviously works too. I wanted to speak broadly for a second. I just wanted to flag that this legislation would fundamentally alter our abilities as local governments to collect revenue to meet our current and future needs. And, I would propose that project subsidies should be proportional to the benefit received and may not need to be or should be borne equally by the state and local governments. We have unique resource demands and we also have unique revenue mechanisms. A few things. I wanted to flag things we like in the substitute. The increased rate obviously, works well. The substitute has the community impact fee program, and I understand that was modeled off of recommendations from the previous MAG board, Municipal Advisory Gas Board effort. That works. We appreciate that, the certainty. One thing I wanted to raise, it's a concern with the lag, and I think you all as a committee have kind of considered this. There, with a lag from it being based on actual miles of pipe constructed, then the payments would follow the following year. That's going to lead to a delay when the impacts are going to be immediate. And I'll just share, based on estimates shared by Glenfard, construction could occur as soon as July 2026 through November 2029. And only a fraction of the impacts for here in the Denali Borough physically involve construction of pipe. There's other things like, camps, lay down yards, temporary access roads, improvements to the easement, things like that. So I guess I just proposed considering an alternative where the developer, require the developer to implement some kind of community impact fee program. We could negotiate directly with them, and then I would, I think we would encourage them to submit payments directly to municipalities prior to construction, investing in mitigation on the front end of development. The ramp up period was removed, and I'll just add that in general, as mayors, I think we were in support of the concept of not taxing in-state gas and the ramp up floor of 250,000 cubic feet of gas per day. We felt like that included in-state gas plus a margin for short-term growth. We definitely support the inclusion of the Anchorage CPI index adjustment to the AVT. A couple other ideas would be a floor for that, like 1%, ceiling of 3.5%, or based on a rolling average. One thing I definitely wanted to flag, the removal of the broad-based preemptions of local revenue. We really value the certainty that the alternative volumetric tax is just exclusively in lieu of property taxes. And that enables the Denali Borough to address some of the unique aspects for us, specific land use agreements with the developer for temporary leases, for those construction camps, pipe laydown yards, and then for a long-term easement for the pipeline itself. There would, I think I mentioned in my last testimony, of the 87 miles of pipe in the Denali Borough, about 10 miles would cross Denali Borough municipal lands directly. Lastly, I just wanted to flag, with all due respect, we don't support the ABT or the community impact payment flowing through the legislature, subject to appropriation. Definitely have concerns with that. As written, and we just advocate for payments to go directly to the municipalities. And I wanted to mention community impact payments would be added on to the community assistance program, formerly revenue sharing. And this is a perennial issue that we and other municipalities have advocated for and requires that consistent advocacy. The program should be a reliable source of revenue for us in recognition of the partnership we share with the state, and the value has eroded over time. Last thing I wanted to mention is that the Denali Borough Assembly has broadly supported this project in the past. They have not considered it yet, the kind of the specifics of the legislation before you. We do intend to consider it at our May meeting, and I'd be happy to share the outcome of that meeting. And really just thank you for the opportunity to share thoughts and feedback.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Noel. Any questions for Mayor Noel? Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being online, Mayor. I had a question because you don't have a property tax. Has the borough ever thought about instituting a property tax, or even growing or annexing area that might be outside of your current boundaries?
Read the room, Senator Kawasaki. That has nothing to do with oil and gas property tax, municipal tax for this project. This is one of those cases and points where you think that you're helping and you're actually just wasting people's time. Like, how is it pertinent that particular borough may or may not have considered whether they want to institute a property tax or not? How is that pertinent to this conversation? This wasting our time, wasting your time.
Senator Kawasaki, through the chair, no, I would say that, we have not really considered property tax. I think there's pretty independent streak here. Local government, recent revenue we did on alcohol.
I'm fast
really on our radar type of property.
Questions for Mayor Noel? All right, I don't see any. Thank you very much, Mayor, for joining us today. I appreciate you taking the time. All right, next up on our list is Mayor Edna DeVries from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough. Hello, Mayor DeVries. Welcome to the committee, and please identify yourself for the record and give us your testimony.
Thank you very much. My name is Edna DeVries. I'm the mayor of the Mat-Su Borough. First of all, it's a little bit off topic, but I did want to thank the Senate for supporting and passing the committee substitute for the House Joint Resolution number 14, supporting the completion of the Port McKenzie rail expansion. And again, I thank you for giving us another opportunity to address you. I know you've been very hard at work. Most all of you know I've sat in that chair, and so I understand what goes on behind coming up with a committee substitute. The Mat-Su Borough remains in favor of the alternate volume tax, the ABT, as noted in our resolution in support of the PILT concept. These are our initial comments given the short time we had to review the current committee substitute. We encourage that version G of Senate Bill 280 retains in the language that the value of the property tax is exempt from the required local contribution to education. Without this exemption, large burdens would be placed on our local taxpayers during the construction, the ramp up to full production, and any that is less than full throughout. The burden would be placed on our local taxpayers without a corresponding protection increase in revenues to fund that mandate. We do have concerns about adding a fully taxable portion to the project, the Fairbanks spur line, without fully accounting for that in discussing the tax amount generated by the project. According to the presentation on April 21st, 2026, before the Senate Resource Committee, the AVT revenue lists $610 million in total to be paid annually by the project. However, this cost to the project does not include any tax levied on the spur line infrastructure. This should be evaluated when considering the total amount of cost the project will incur and when discussing revenues to municipalities. We also have some concern as there is no wrap-up period. Fundamentally, the Mat-Su Borough supports an exemption for an in-state gas during phase one, so not to pass the additional costs along to the local ratepayers. As a matter of policy, a goal we should all share is to provide reliable gas at the lowest possible cost for Alaskans. Finally, giving the high estimates of tax and the AVT payments under this project, the project payments by the AK LNG project may be getting close to what would be payable under the current tax laws. If this bill does not fundamentally assist the project development, the committee should consider leaving the current tax system in place. Again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to give you our input.
Thank you, Mayor DeVries. Committee members, questions? Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor DeVries, for being online. Just to clarify your last statement, when we were talking about the G version of the bill, the newer version of the bill, you said you'd rather see it go back to the old tax system, which there was essentially not, it was just the AVT, but then there's of course a 10-year basically lag between when revenue would be coming to municipalities.
Right. We had in our previous testimony talked about the PIL. That's the position that the Borough Assembly has taken, and we stand still alongside that. Thank you.
So
Follow up, Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you're supportive of some sort of PILT in advance of the total construction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Yes, Senator Myers has a question also.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mayor DeVries, I'm just curious how, I understand that Glenfarne is still trying to, schedules willing, not always the case for busy people. But I understand that Glenfarne is still trying to meet with the mayors on a weekly basis or close to it. I'm wondering if that's still the case and how those discussions are going.
I have not been when the first mayor committee was set up. We decided that Mike Brown, the borough manager, would partake, and then I did later on partake in some of those. But I have not been partaking when Glenfarne has been there. But I can find out for sure if that is a true statement or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other questions for Mayor DeVries? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mayor DeVries, for joining us today. Next up, we have Mayor Mindy O'Neill, City of Fairbanks. Mayor.
Before we get to Fairbanks, we've heard two mayors thus far who are in favor of having money up front, some sort of tax or payment system set up so that during the construction phase, there's some payment from the project to the boroughs for impacts to the boroughs that the borough has to deal with. Okay. I think it would be really helpful if we actually understood what we were talking about, as in either an itemized list or an assessment of what those costs are expected to be or anticipated to be. It is one thing to have a conversation that says we need a theoretical payment to cover all of our expenses. That's a theoretical conversation, right? And it is a different conversation when you say, here's a piece of paper. This is what we assess as our costs that we would anticipate likely having to incur. And then you have a legitimate conversation about what the right dollar figure is and or what the right structure is going to be to meet that dollar figure. So for example, if you've got a borough where the pipeline crosses the corner of the borough and it doesn't impact anything, you can say, well, there's going to be right-of-way issues that we have to deal with. And you can create a list of things where you say that it's going to impact you, but you're not assigning any sort of dollar figure to it. So it's not something that can be fact-checked. So just because the pipeline crosses your area doesn't mean you're actually incurring something. But if you can say that you are, and create this demand for, because we're just like the other borough and they've got actual impact. So, we got to be treated fairly. You're adding costs to the project so that you're being treated fair, not because you actually have costs that need to be addressed. So I would recommend to the committee that you demand to see from the boroughs an assessment on why you think you're going to have additional costs. Road traffic, there's X number of employees you're expecting to see, law enforcement, whatever it is, schools, there's more kids in schools. I mean, what is it? For construction, that's probably not going to be the case, the kids in schools. It's just the workers up here. Maybe it's the families that move up. I don't know. Whatever the projection is that the boroughs are anticipating that they're going to have to deal with, they need to do that legwork. They should understand themselves, right? If there's a multi-million-dollar project coming in and there's X number of employees that are going to be there, what are those employees going to need? And then how does that impact the city? How does that impact the borough in a dollar figure sense? So then the legislature can actually have a conversation based on dollars and cents and identifying a right structure. It may just be that the legislature decides, hey, you know what? We need to keep our hands out of this. Let the borough, we'll draft the legislation so that the borough can negotiate directly with the company for some arrangement to cover these projected costs. It's just a contractual arrangement or something, right? But let's not have a conversation about a theoretical cost and not actually understand what we're talking about, because that's what I think we're doing and what I think we'll just continue to do unless we have a legitimate conversation about legitimate costs. All right, what's the city of Fairbanks have to say?
O'Neill, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Giesel and members of the Senate Resources Committee. It's an honor to be here with you today and to speak on behalf of the city of Fairbanks. For the record, my name is Mindy O'Neill. I'm the mayor of the city of Fairbanks. The city appreciates the significant work that has gone into SB 280 for version 2. We recognize that this version makes meaningful improvements, particularly in acknowledging community impacts, providing statewide revenue sharing, and requiring a Fairbanks spur line with in-state access and price protection. Those are very important steps forward, and we want to start by recognizing that. There is a few key issues that we wanted to highlight. While the city of Fairbanks is not on the main pipeline route, we will absolutely be on the front lines of construction impacts. As the primary logistics hub for interior Alaska, Fairbanks will serve as a staging area for workers, equipment, and materials. That means we expect significant and immediate impacts to city services.
Okay, you can't just say significant and immediate. Proper management would require you to come up with a dollar figure to identify what that is. If it's hard to come up with, then you put an estimate down, okay? Otherwise, I come up with a different number than those 7 members on the committee come up with, right? It is up to discretion to figure it out. So this is an example of you're not properly managing your local jurisdiction if you're just going to throw that out there. You need to actually know what the costs are going to be. or project what the costs are going to be. That would be good budgeting, good management.
Particularly police, fire, EMS, dispatch, road maintenance, and our public infrastructure. In short, while the pipeline may not run through the city, the impact surely will. Version G does provide some tools that help us address this. First, the community impact fee set at $1 million per mile of pipeline constructed creates a funding pool that can be used to support impacted communities. Second, the statewide per capita distribution of pipeline revenues ensures that Fairbanks is not entirely excluded from the project benefits, and we appreciate that. And third, the requirement for a direct spur line to Fairbanks, along with price caps and in-state priority access, will absolutely help ensure that the interior will see long-term energy benefits that are crippling our communities. So we appreciate all of those provisions. Our concern is that the support for communities like Fairbanks is not guaranteed, and it may not arise when we need it. The impact fee funding appears to be discretionary, depending on legislative appropriation, and we all know how that can go sometimes. And the bill does not clearly define eligibility for communities that are not on the pipeline corridor, but will experience substantial indirect impacts.
Yeah, Craig, you ask a good question. You're saying 1 million per mile. That's what's in the committee substitute. They've identified a way to raise money based on the length of the pipeline segments, I guess. And does that mean that you need to collect that money for actual costs that are incurred? No, it doesn't. It's just an arbitrary way to say we're going to collect a sum of money. And what I'm arguing is they need to identify a projection of what you think you're going to need. That way there's transparency and you identify what the correct system is to address the need, right? And I would argue that this needs to be just left up to the local municipality. Communicate directly take your cost estimate of what you think it's going to cost and go directly to Glenfarne, the project, and say, you're coming into our jurisdiction. Here's what we think is going to be the costs. And we're going to negotiate directly with you for some sort of an agreement to cover these costs. And the state law supports our ability to do this. That's what I think needs to happen.
Additionally, the timing is a concern. The cost to our community, staffing, equipment, infrastructure strain will begin as soon as construction activity ramps up, maybe even sooner than that. But under the current structure, funding could lag behind those impacts. So from our perspective, there are a few targeted improvements that would make the bill much stronger. First, we recommend explicitly recognizing hubs and community support communities like Fairbanks as eligible for impact funding, not just communities along the route. Second, we suggest establishing a targeted allocation or set aside for municipalities that can demonstrate significant service impacts, so that funding is not diluted solely through mileage or statewide population formulas. And third, we encourage the committee to consider making at least a portion of the impact funding predictable and formula-based rather than entirely discretionary, so communities can plan and respond effectively.
This mayor is making a similar point as I'm making with regard to the demonstrate. If we can demonstrate impact, then we should be able to seek compensation, right? And that makes complete sense. The question is going to be in what is the criteria for which you need to demonstrate, right? All of that can be drafted in law. The law can be drafted here that says the project owner, project sponsor here shall, and then it's going to address local concerns. And how are you going to do that? Spell out how the demonstration has to happen from the local municipality. And as long as they meet the statutory requirements for demonstration, then there is this obligation on the part of the producer, the project owner, to meet those requirements. Okay. if I was the project developer, this is something that's going to add cost to my project, right? But that's the cost of coming into the community and doing it. Like, it's either you meet that or it's taxpayers meet that. Hard for the taxpayers to meet that in a short term, but it's much easier for you as the project that's seeking financing to cover those upfront costs. Because I mean, they're no different than if you've got to create a man camp for your employees. That's an upfront cost, and it's no different than the upfront cost of the impact that man camp has on the local area, right? Again, as long as the company's going to know what their cost is with a man camp, they're going to have that written down on a spreadsheet. They're going to know what their costs are. Does the city know what their costs are? Because the city's going to have to go to the statute, go to the law that says I get to prove that I'm going to have that I have these costs, and they need to know what those costs are, right? So that's where the language, the statute needs to be drafted such that it details how the municipalities communicate to the project owner what their limits are in regards to how they communicate their costs. But those specific costs need to be addressed, because otherwise you're talking costs that could accumulate multiple years. And we, the taxpayers, are the ones that are going to pick up the tab for that if there's not a mechanism for that to happen. I get that adds cost to the program, to the project. It's minuscule. Even if you're talking to millions of dollars along the entire length of the pipeline as it moves forward over years, it's a $40 billion project. $1 million in a year or a couple of years to a municipality for demonstrable impacts, this is not a huge deal. This is not a big deal. It should not be a big deal.
And finally, we believe the bill should allow for earlier pre-construction funding because communities need to prepare before the impacts fully arrive, not after. In closing, the City of Fairbanks supports the goal of advancing a gasoline project that benefits all Alaskans, and Version G is a strong step in that direction. But to make it work for communities like ours, the bill should ensure that those bearing real and immediate impacts, whether on the route or not, have reliable, timely, and adequate support. And I'll just add that if anybody has not read the book from Dermot Cole, Amazing Pipeline Stories, How the Building of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline Transformed Life in America's Last Frontier, you should, because it gives a precursor to what happened back then and what we could be seeing again. So thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mayor O'Neill. I appreciate your comments. I'll add, I actually was here during the building of TAPS and was from Fairbanks, though I was working in Anchorage at the time. So questions for Mayor O'Neill? Yes, Senator Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So Mayor O'Neill, I was wondering, we've seen some price spikes around the Fairbanks area for electricity and gas. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you're looking forward to or anticipating if we can get energy costs down.
Yeah, I mean, we have folks in our community who are looking at 30 to 40% of their income spent on energy. And while compared to some of the other places around the state that are off the road system, this is pretty detrimental for us. And it's not unusual, it's just getting higher and getting worse. So that means it's harder for businesses to stay open. It's harder to make our payments. Food is more expensive. Gas is more expensive. Certainly, I think everybody's feeling that across the state. But with the added increase to our electricity and heating fuel costs, especially with the past ridiculous winter that we had, a very, very hard winter, very cold, we're feeling the impacts for sure.
Rob gets the attaboy for asking the question. We finally get to have a conversation here about what is the impact going to be of actually getting the pipeline? What does that do for people? Like, this is the first time I've heard this in this committee meeting. That's great. I love it. Thanks, Rob, for sticking up for the non-government people.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mayor O'Neill? Yes, Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you. Thanks for being online, Mayor O'Neill. So I guess sort of the question that Senator Meyer asked about was, like what I think having a stable, clean natural gas supply is something that's really important. In the meantime, I know that electricity rates are rising in Fairbanks specifically because we've got those several coal burning power plants in the district, but then Golden Valley, for instance, is also utilizing oil heat, naphtha, to function, to create the extra spin. Has there been any talk about how much cost that would increase based on a potential increase in demand? And then I got a second question basically on housing for the same reasons.
Our conversations have been, I would say, very preliminary. It's kind of like this has been a 50-year-old promise that hasn't come through. And so how much time do we actually spend planning on this before we have something in black and white? And so while we're talking about it, any real detail, it hasn't been discussed.
That's a legitimate point. How much effort in the real world are people actually putting forward on this? Because it's still got to make it through the legislature, right? We're actually going to see a project or not. Like, I'm not going to put a whole lot of effort into figuring out what my costs are because I don't know the pipeline's actually going to happen, right? I mean, I'm talking to a committee that says, we don't really need this project. We could have a project. It doesn't really matter if this one goes through. I mean, I don't really know. Are you guys that I'm talking to serious about getting a project built? I don't know. It's hard to tell some days.
Follow up, Senator Kawasaki.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to follow up, and as far as housing goes, I know that housing has been something the Interior has been sort of battling most recently with, the lack of housing, and particularly for families from the military, because of the military growth, we've seen sort of outsized growth in the Interior area, 54 new jets, 5th-gen jets, and then now 4 KC-135s being stationed at Eielson. So big thousands of people potentially coming to Fairbanks. How has the city and borough negotiated those types of discussions with sort of what we have is a kind of an overall lack of housing across the state?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the military has had to make some pretty tough decisions for servicemen and women coming to the Interior. They're often not allowed to bring their families, which is a hardship on them, especially brand new community. And that's been the solution to the problem, as you stated, of lack of housing. There is a will to build housing. We're facing circumstances that are the same everywhere: short building season, workforce problems, and materials. But our communities have worked on tax incentives, tax rebates, and some other financing models that help bring down those risks to builders, and start to work on affordable housing and workforce housing as the focus.
Economic growth would demand additional housing. I'm just going to say that. If you've got a pipeline coming forward, again, and a committee that wants to support a pipeline coming forward, and you can telegraph, hey, we're going to get a pipeline. We're going to get this figured out. This tax thing is just, these are the details. We'll get it worked out, but we're all moving forward with this pipeline project, right? If the operators in the environment, I'm talking about the businesses, the people, have a feeling that this is going to move forward, then they start leaning forward in the foxhole. Another military aphorism here. It is anticipating something because we think it's going to happen. This body is communicating the exact opposite. Like we want to raise taxes and we want to eliminate reference to this project. Like the takeaway is, I'm not sure. I don't know that you really want the project. So why would I risk my own capital in building homes for something that I don't know is actually going to happen, right? So the legislature could do a lot to solving that part of the problem of communicating that their intent is to make sure that this pipeline goes forward, and they're going to bend over backwards to make sure that it goes forward, so that those carpenters and electricians and people who need to have some lead time to get houses built, they're going to prioritize that because they are relatively certain that the pipeline's coming. So the private economy, the demand for homes, you get all of the things considered here. The demand for homes should result in additional homes being built if the builders are convinced that demand is actually there and it needs and can be met, right? Government getting in the way and sending mixed signals is a problem to that. All right. Are we done with Fairbanks?
Thank you.
Very good. Mayor O'Neill, when Mayor Hopkins spoke to us, he talked about Tiger Team meetings. Have those meetings had any discussion about this gas pipeline and what policies might be beneficial?
Yeah, we did have an initial Tiger Team meeting with Glen Farm about 2 weeks ago. It was, I would say, just a very high level conversation about the impacts of Fairbanks, and there was an opportunity to share the same concerns that I shared here today. We've really focused that Tiger Team into an oil and gas pipeline Tiger Team. So we're focused on that during our meetings, which are about every 2 weeks.
Gotcha. You mentioned, and the others, Mayor Noel also brought up the delay in the impact payments. And that is certainly something that this committee recognizes. Those impacts are going to be significantly expensive from the get-go. I mean, before there's any pipe in the ground and any $1 million a mile being assessed for impact. I appreciated your comments and the other
delays in funding and delays in moving money is what happens when you add a level of bureaucracy, which is the state. In this regard, it's not necessary. You can create the statute and allow the payments to happen at the lower levels from where the payee is, or the payer is, Glen Farm or the project, to the payee, which is the borough. It doesn't have to have the state's hands on it, because somebody's got to get paid at the state to manage that, when it could just happen directly between the entities that are concerned here. So craft the legislation that gets the state's hands out of it. It's not your responsibility. Don't worry about it.
And Mayor Noel's comments about the process of securing the money that is having to go through legislative appropriation or through DCCD. If you or your team have any specific suggestions on how we could improve that, we would be open to that. I have to admit, I am somewhat biased toward Fairbanks since I was born and raised there, but I because of that, I know exactly what you're dealing with and will be dealing with. So any specific ideas that you have, we would be open to.
Thank you, Senator Diesel. I appreciate that. And I would underscore Mayor Noel's suggestion of direct payment to communities, similar to the community impact grants that we receive, or community assistance, I guess it's called.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you for spending time with us this afternoon. Appreciate your testimony. Let's see. Mayor Verhey.
Rick is asking if I honestly think that'll happen. it has a good chance of it because the mayor's asks here do carry weight in this committee. They do carry weight. So if the mayors are saying, look, we really don't want to have to go through the state, it is carrying weight. I would argue that it's carrying weight. Does it happen? I don't know. It might not happen in this committee, but in other committees, like finance, it probably could happen, because I think there are other people who recognize that the state doesn't need to be getting its hands in this, and it just adds delay and cost, and it's unnecessary. So whether it happens in this committee or not remains to be seen. But I think that there is some weight to the conversation. Thanks for the comment or the question.
Hagan isn't here. He was not sure he could join us. That's the mayor of Nenana. However, the policy director of the mayor of Anchorage, Nolan Clouda, is online. Welcome, Mr. Clouda. Please identify yourself for the record and give us your testimony.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm Nolan Clouda, and I am the policy director for Mayor Suzanne LaFrance at the municipality of Anchorage. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to weigh in. Want to start off saying that the mayor strongly supports the gas line project moving forward and views this as a huge positive, and municipalities are certainly going to benefit economically and in terms of energy resilience and cost. So we thank the committee for tackling this issue. We're in a little bit of a different position, compared to some of the other municipalities that you've heard from, in that we don't have any actual mileage of pipeline, that falls within our boundaries. So we wouldn't be receiving any direct tax revenues, either under the existing law or under the at least the original version of this bill. But at the same time, we will be deeply impacted. There's going to be many thousands of workers that will be based in Anchorage, and will be a big logistical, operational, administrative.
Deeply impacted, big logistical operation, right? Well, gosh, we should throw millions of dollars at that. Like, let's come up with some numbers here. Legislature, let's require some assessments that we can then ask our consultants to weigh in on here quickly and say, is this a realistic cost estimate, or is this pie in the sky? We're getting bamboozled by our own people. So let's actually put some numbers to this instead of just throwing hypotheticals out.
And so that's a good thing for Anchorage, but also brings impacts, more demand on our services, and transit, law enforcement, EMS response, parks, road maintenance, and all of that. And in addition, we have a very highly constrained housing market, not unlike you heard from Mayor O'Neill earlier too. So we know that we don't have a revenue system currently, through our property taxes that'll be super responsive to influx of workers. So we don't have a way of recouping revenue, directly from sales taxes or other kinds of mechanisms like that. We only get revenue when building occurs, and that happens very slowly. So we like the committee substitute a lot. I think the approach of distributing revenues through community assistance, especially on a per capita distribution, is something that would really benefit us. That we're not looking for a cash cow here, but we do want a way that could realistically address some of the kinds of impacts and some of the kinds of demands on services. So also really important that that's somewhat of a reliable revenue stream. I think that there is some nervousness about that being subject to appropriation. But nonetheless, I think that that's a really smart approach that, the committee substitute takes. Also, a couple of features that.
Okay. Whether you're talking about miles of pipeline and that's how you're going to figure out how much money gets thrown at a problem, or whether it's per capita, like how many people you've got in the city of Anchorage doesn't predict or doesn't detail the costs that are going to be associated with that many people. Why does having more people mean you're going to have greater impact on a workforce coming in? I would think that actually it would be the reverse. If you have fewer people and there's a large influx, you've got a bigger problem. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at it backwards, but just basing it off of a factor of how many people doesn't seem to be getting at the root cause of the problem, which is we've got an estimate. We've got actual costs that we're going to have to incur. Let's figure out what those are. Let's estimate what they are so we can actually deal with this in a real manner.
We really like it. It looks like the committee substitute took out, there were exemptions in the original bill on taxing some properties that are used or committed for construction, operation, or maintenance of the gas line. And we had worries about what exactly that would mean and what would be exempt, because we wouldn't be getting any, original bill, any tax revenue at all, but we might have exemptions on certain gas line related assets that fall within the municipality. And so we did have that concern we ended. And so it looks like that's gone, which is something we really like. There was also a provision about sales and use taxes that are tied to gas line being exempt as well. And that could include things like bed taxes, perhaps vehicle rental, fuel excise taxes, and other things. That was another one that could have resulted in us, being exempt, having to exempt taxes but not have any kind of revenue stream to compensate for it.
Yeah, Kevin makes a really good point here that we ought to just pause for a second. The impacts to many of the cities is a net positive, and I would agree. I mean, if you've got a sales tax and you've got more people coming in and they're buying groceries or buying things, then you're going to see an increase in sales tax. Okay, so you've already got a mechanism for capturing additional revenue for any costs that you might be incurring, right? Versus a property tax from people coming in that are temporary workers. They're not buying a home. They're not buying things if you don't have a sales tax, right? There's no way to capture any sort of revenue from that influx of people. So anyway, the point is we have to understand what it is that we're actually talking about. The costs, the impact. We want impact aid money. Okay, well, how do you know whether to throw 100,000, a million, 10 million? How do you know which number to throw at it until you've got some kind of estimate of what the impact is going to be? Let's not waste our time here. If the impact is going to be negligible, or if it's going to be covered already within the tax structure of the entity, then there isn't a need for the state to address it or for the project to address it, because there's already a way to take care of the problem. It's not like the city of Anchorage needs to have some revenue coming in if they are already collecting revenue that's going to address the problem. Same thing with the boroughs, right? If you've already got a mechanism to address it, then you don't need another mechanism. So let's actually talk about the costs. That way we can identify what the right solution is. It may be that you're throwing in costs that you're already going to be compensated for through a sales tax or what other means. And so by detailing it and drawing it out, discussing it, it will help us understand whether you're blowing smoke up our skirt or you have a legitimate cost that you can't cover. So let's get into the details here. Let's do the work that the people are expecting us to do as managers and leaders of our respective entities.
So I think it, to wrap it up, we like a lot of the changes that we're seeing here. Think this is positive. We really think it's important that Anchorage gets represented. We are going to be an impacted community, even though we're a little bit different from some of the others. So happy to take any questions that members have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clauda. Any questions for Mr. Clauda? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for spending time with us, and please thank the mayor for allowing you to testify today. Let's see. Next up, we have Terry Eubank. This is the city manager of the city of Kenai. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Giesel, members of the Senate Resource Committee. My name is Terry Eubank, and I serve as city manager for the city of Kenai, the best place to Alaska. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I would like to express my support for your consideration given to local governments in the SB 280 Committee Substitute Version G. The city of Kenai is a home rule municipality located within an organized borough. The city is financially responsible for the municipal services it provides, including police, fire, streets, public works, water and sewer utilities, parks and recreation, and airport and general government services. These services are provided without direct financial assistance from the Kenai Peninsula Borough. The city funds operations primarily through local sales tax and property tax. The Alaska LNG project has the potential to be transformative for the state of Alaska, but it will also create substantial impacts for the city of Kenai. Kenai will be the closest city to have a significant portion of the project, including the LNG liquefaction and export facility, yet no portion of the project is expected to be located within the city's boundaries. As a result, the city may experience major impacts without directly benefiting from project property taxes or the tax structure proposed under the original version of SB 280. Those impacts include increased demand at the Kenai Municipal Airport, which is one of only 3 municipally owned Part 139 airports in Alaska. Increased traffic and transportation impacts, unless all materials are delivered by sea to the Nikiski dock. Those materials will flow through the city of Kenai to get to the construction site. Increased housing pressure. In a recently completed statistically valid survey, 74% of Kenai residents indicated the city already faces a housing availability and affordability challenge. This project will significantly worsen those conditions without mitigation. Increased emergency service demand. Additional traffic, workforce activity, and population growth will likely increase calls for police, fire, and EMS services both within the city limits and in surrounding areas through automatic and mutual aid responses. Increased demand on water and sewer infrastructure associated with temporary construction related to population growth. And workforce competition. The city may face challenges in what is already a very competitive labor market, retaining and recruiting employees as labor is drawn to higher paying construction jobs. The original version of SB 280 did not provide meaningful mechanism to help communities fund these increased service demands, or the capital improvements needed to respond to them. While city sales taxes and property tax revenue may increase over time, those revenues are uncertain, delayed, and unlikely to cover the near-term infrastructure and service impacts. Version G improves that framework by recognizing impacts to local communities and creating tools to address them, including a clear statutory revenue sharing formula, construction impact payments for affected communities, and improved transparency and legislative oversight. Tax policy is an important component of the project. However, the structure that does not recognize the direct and indirect costs borne by nearby municipalities will create inequities and local hardship. Keeping energy costs low for Alaskans is important, but it should not come at the expense of a few host communities. Without the consideration given in version G, the city of Kenai and its approximately 8,000 residents could be left to absorb the cost of increased services and infrastructure demands created by the project. And thank you for your consideration.
Okay. So we don't fund on maybes and mays. We fund on things that I guess I should back up and say we should not fund on mays and maybes. I suspect that we do all the time, but we should not. So I would have to say kudos to Mr. Eubank for at least thinking through this on what subject matter, like the areas in which you think you're going to may or may not have impacts. The next step is to identify what you think those costs are going to be. And Kevin makes a very good point here. Kenai Peninsula Borough doesn't see any impact until phase 2, if that's accurate, right? I don't know what during phase 1, what's going on in the Kenai Peninsula Borough, but it isn't a pipeline because the pipeline phase 1 terminus is over on the other side of the inlet, right? Phase 2 is where they start doing the work on the pipeline coming this way in the plant. So Kevin's likely right. Kenai Peninsula Borough doesn't just need $1 million because everybody else is getting $1 million. So You solve this problem by putting in statute that entities, cities and boroughs can go directly to the company for impact aid for legitimate costs. And you detail in law what those legitimate costs are. And then you allow the company and the project and the municipalities to work that out by the statute. Okay. And then the state doesn't have to do anything about this. Like there's no Department of Economic Development, lack of economic development. You don't need all those bureaucrats to get involved here. Just allow the project and the municipalities to work this out together so that they can, it's like taking care of it at the lowest level. That's what we want. That's what is going to be most efficient. Okay. If the statute has to change to allow that to happen, then that's what you want. Just make the company responsible for addressing these problems, and then spell out in the statute that the problems have to have a dollar figure, like they have to have some sort of legitimate cost estimate to them. They can't just say, "Hey, well, we've had this this cost over here and this impact, and we need you to give us money for that." Come on, we don't manage projects like that. We should not manage projects like that.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Eubank. Senator Dunbar has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a question actually more for you or for, I don't know if Ms. Kawasaki is able to answer, but it just something that occurred to me. So this obviously is the city manager for the city of Kenai, not the Kenai Borough. Mm-hmm. The AVT portion associated with the LNG export facility was to Kenai, but was that the Kenai Borough and just the Kenai Borough? Was there a way to have that funding flow down to the local communities within the Kenai Borough?
I can have Ms. Kawasaki come forward to answer that question.
Madam Chair.
Yes. In the meantime, Senator Wielechowski.
While we're waiting, I have a question for Mr. Eubank. Appreciate your testimony. Have you been in discussions with Glenfarne about a PILT or any property tax discussions at all with them or with the governor's office?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Wielechowski, through the chair. I had my first conversation this morning. So no, I don't think people have been envisioning, again, the city of Kenai in those talks because, again, the construction is not taking place inside the city of Kenai.
Follow up, Senator Wielechowski.
I don't know the area well enough, but which community is the construction being taken place in? Is it Soldotna then, or is it in Nikiski? Does it run through Kenai at all? Because if it runs through Kenai, I would presume you should get property taxes on it.
Again, thank you, Senator Wielechowski, through the chair. No, it's going to be within the borough's jurisdiction. It'll take place out in Nikiski, and it will not be within the city of Kenai's municipal boundaries. But all of the traffic will be coming through the municipal boundaries of the city of Kenai, is the point.
So, Mr. Eubank, could you, I actually am familiar with the area. I used to have it as part of my district, so I'm pretty familiar with it. But could you describe for the rest of the committee, let's say that material...
Unfortunately, we're pretty familiar with you too. Oh my goodness. Boy, have you changed, Senator Giesel. We're looking at somewhere around doubling our population in Nikiski. There's going to be tremendous impact to this little community of 4,000 people. And yeah, we all go to Kenai for our groceries. It's where I live, right? Kenai, the city manager is right. All of the traffic, if it doesn't come to the dock that the project is supposed to build, and it comes into Seward or it comes into Anchorage and has to be trucked to the project here in Nikiski, then it has to go through a portion of Soldotna, and it has to go through the center of Kenai because that's where the spur highway goes. That's the only way to get there. So he's right. The question is there already mechanisms that are going to capture the revenue necessary for those things? I don't know. Is it more effective to put up a temporary toll? I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud. Don't shoot me. If you got heavy trucks coming from elsewhere in through Kenai, maybe there's a situation where a toll needs to be set up, and you're taking a per truck fee for recovering the costs. I don't know. This is an arrangement that you could do with the project. I'm just thinking out loud here. Point is, let the borough, let the city negotiate with the district, with the project, and the state just enable that so that the district or the project can't just disregard what the city of Kenai has to say, right? There's statutory authority that some sort of an agreement has to be reached between these two entities, all right? Because those real costs if we don't already have some sort of revenue generating measure in place that captures additional revenue for the additional costs that are being incurred, not the imaginary ones, but are being incurred, that's already taken care of. It is the things that will not be incurred that need to be addressed. Otherwise, we taxpayers, property owners are going to pay the cost, because that's how we pay our taxes, or through a sales tax increase for the city of Kenai, right? It is, well, Borough has a sales tax as well. Taxes go up if the costs go up and there's no other way for the project to pick it up. Citizens, residents of the borough and of the city are going to pick up that additional cost. That's what's going to happen. So let's make sure that we understand the costs, at least the projected cost. Maybe we don't get it 100% right, but let's at least get it as right as we can get it. Then we have a conversation about how we're going to recoup those costs. If they're already being recouped, then we don't need to worry about that. That needs to not be part of the politics being played here with regard to squeezing as much as you can out of the greedy gas company. That's sarcasm if you couldn't tell.
Were being delivered to Seward, and they were to be transported to the site there in Nikiski. Can you describe the roads and what communities that material would pass through?
Absolutely, Senator Giesel. So coming from Seward, they would take Highway 1 out of Seward until they reached about the Cooper Landing area. Then they would take the Sterling Highway through Cooper Landing. That would progress through Sterling into Soldotna. When they got in Soldotna, they would turn right and head towards Kenai on the Kenai Spur Highway, passing through Kenai and progressing out towards Nikiski. And that Nikiski is where the liquefaction plant is slated to be built.
Perfect. Thank you for describing that. So it actually impacts quite a few communities.
Okay. If we're talking about people driving on the roads, the missus has made a perfect point. These are all state roads. Okay. They're state highways. The spur highway that's going right through Kenai is maintained by the state. It is not maintained by the city of Kenai. Side roads are, of course, maintained by the city of Kenai. If there's additional population, those roads are going to, obviously there's going to be a cost associated with that for the city of Kenai. But the main roads where the trucks are going to go, like the trucks aren't driving through the neighborhoods in Kenai. The trucks are driving from point A to point B through Kenai on the spur highway. And that is a state maintained road. Okay. So the city of Kenai needing revenue for trucks transiting through is, in my opinion, not a legitimate expense. Like you can say, oh, look at all this traffic. We need road. Well, you don't maintain the roads. So why would you need more money for them? We need more for police. Okay. Let's show me your costs. Need to hire an additional police officer for road enforcement, road violation enforcement. Okay. Throw the cost down. Let's have the talk. How is that? Is that cost already being picked up by additional people who are moving into the city of Kenai, and you have more taxes being paid either through property taxes or sales taxes or whatever? Are you already collecting revenue that can be spent towards that? Obviously, if you can project the costs that you think you're going to incur, and you know that, and part of the justification for incurring those costs is you're going to have a population increase, well, then you should also be able to project the revenue increase that you would have from that population increase. And so, are we really talking about additional costs or not that need to be covered? Or are you already picking up the additional revenue through some structure, right? This is why if the state is going to make law to address this or put in a program where the project has to spend more money, you need to be talking apples and apples. You need to actually understand what costs you're talking about. Put the numbers down and put especially the numbers down that you're saying don't have any associated revenue generating measures with them to cover them, right? That's what's really important. That's how you focus this and narrow it down, is because you can write all this stuff down and put numbers to it. My fear is just thinking out loud here from what I'm seeing is the legislature is going to take the public testimony here, and that's it. That's all the thinking we're going to do about this. We're going to go back to the lawyers and say, hey, draft this bill to address this problem. We've got all these costs that are going to be associated. We need to figure out a way where Glenfarne pays all of these entities and figure out how it's going to be fair. And nobody's talking about what actual costs are and which costs aren't being covered by the economics of population growth and whatever else, right? I mean, for example, if there's a toll and there's additional trucks and additional trucks are paying the toll, then you're already raising the revenue needed to address the increase in the vehicles. So you don't need an additional PILT because you already have a structure there to deal with it. Yes, it's going to be inconvenient, but you're already collecting the revenue. That's a hypothetical because there is no toll. There's no toll on the spur highway.
As it makes its way. And thanks for describing that. We'll get some maps at some point. Senator Dunbar, returning to your question, or
and I'll say, Moose Pass, you are not forgotten.
Moose Pass, that's right.
So,
yes.
Actually, I have two little questions. That's all right, Mr. Eubank. I'm just razzing you. Actually, I had a question for you, Mr. Eubank, before I turn to Ms. Kawasaki. You said you had your first convo today. Was that with the governor's office or with Glenfarne?
Yes, sir. Senator Dunbar. It was with representatives from Glenfarne.
Very good. Thank you for that. So, Ms. Kawasaki, going back to you, and I haven't turned to that page yet, but for the AVT portion associated with the LNG pipeline in particular, and of course there is also some pipe as well that is going to go through the borough. But for that, when we say it's going to Kenai, does that mean the borough of Kenai? And is there any way to ensure that some of that very large chunk of revenue from the LNG export facility goes to some of the other communities? I imagine Soldotna probably is interested, but certainly Kenai.
Ms. Kawasaki, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the committee, and thank you, Senator Dunbar, for the question. The way that the formula...
Please introduce yourself for the record. Thank you.
My name is Sonia Kawasaki. I am Senate Majority Legal Counsel. In the committee substitute that we introduced on Monday, which is version G, there is a formula that would have revenue sharing between the state and the the municipalities and the state through the community assistance program for the gas pipeline. And under the community assistance program, the funds would be distributed to communities on a per capita basis. And so Kenai for the pipeline the municipality of Kenai would receive funding through miles of pipe and would also receive funding through the per capita program under the community assistance program. My understanding is that within the community assistance program that cities contained within boroughs are also expected to receive funding under that program. And I believe, I know that DCCED in the past was online. They would have a better understanding of how that is shared to cities contained within boroughs. And then just sorry, I apologize. Secondly, the other mechanism for extending funds to communities that are impacted would be through the community impacts fee and allocation program that is currently structured within the CS for SB 280.
Follow up, Madam Chair.
Yes, but before that happens, I'll just call out the pages on page 29 and 30 of committee substitute version G. It talks about allocation of the volumetric tax, and it calls out specifically Kenai Peninsula Borough. Under allocation of community impact fee, it does say municipalities versus communities or cities. That's he's not the only person to, Mr. Eubank is not the only person to call that out. Senator Dunbar, follow up?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I think that satisfactory, that answers my question. That is to say, we've got several funding streams. The 50% of the gas pipeline going into the CAP, the Community Assistance Program, could be given to these municipalities, where they have to go through some kind of application for it. It wouldn't be dedicated, or sort of by right. And then you've got the per mile that similarly would go there. But in the case of the gas treatment plant and the LNG export facility, it probably is cleaner and simpler to provide all the money to the North Slope Borough and the Kenai Peninsula Borough. But we will be relying on particularly the Kenai Borough to manage a very large amount of money, and hopefully they are able to direct that to a variety of local governments. Yeah, I don't necessarily think that we should change that provision, but I think it's worth considering that the money doesn't have an automatic way to get to some of the impacted communities like Soldotna or Kenai. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
If you're already recognizing that there's an application process, and that application process is going to DCEED, why don't you just let the application process work itself out between the municipalities, either the borough or the city, and the producer? Let them deal with the paperwork issue, just abiding by state law, and let them work this out. You don't need the government department to be managing this. This structure that you're talking about is not necessary. It's just going to add cost to the project. And that means cost to your gas.
Senator Wielechowski.
Thank you. For Mr. Eubank, so I presume the city of Kenai is part of the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and I'm just curious that the mechanism, is there a mechanism by which property taxes that go to the Kenai Peninsula Borough are passed on to the local cities and other communities within the Peninsula Borough?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Dunbar, to the chair. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, currently we have the power as a home rule municipality to assess our own mill rate, but that is only on property located within the city. I think the powers of a second-class borough are both created and limited in statute and by the voters of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. So I don't know of a direct mechanism like you're talking about. I can give you one example, like the Kenai Peninsula Borough has not adopted area-wide economic development powers. We have discussions, numerous discussions about economic development and the borough's ability to participate inside one of the incorporated cities. But because they don't have area-wide powers, they can only operate in the borough jurisdiction, not inside an incorporated city. So I don't think the mechanism is there like you think. And, you know, like some of the other mayors have discussed here today, I don't think the city is particularly keen on being beholden to funding flowing through the state to the borough. We have to go through 2 layers of government trying to get a reasonable allocation for the impacts on our community. We'd like to have a seat at the table.
So
That's exactly it. Thank you, Mr. Eubank, for making it. These people here are deaf. They don't hear you. They are not going to do that. Guarantee. Well, I don't guarantee it. Very good odds that they are not going to take the state out of the mechanism here for handing out money. Like that's like saying we don't need to hire these people at the state because we don't need them to do this. We're going to have to fire somebody. No, we're not going to do that. But thank you, Mr. Eubank, for making this point. It would just allow the city of Kenai to work directly with the project, following the statute that requires a list, an application process, and a list of costs that are not currently being borne by some other taxing mechanism, some other revenue generating measure, and submit those to the project, and the project has to come up with a compensation for it. Let's keep this simple.
Senator Wilkowski, follow up.
I'm just curious. I see your concerns, and I'm wrestling with the notion of how we fix it. How do we put in statute, or do we even fix it at all, or do we just leave it up to the local municipalities to make this decision? How would you recommend we address this issue?
Watch Oversight Live on Wednesday night, and you'll have a suggestion.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. One I probably don't have a great answer for right now. I do think on project impacts and impact aid, it may be better for the city to directly negotiate with the project to provide impact
What a novel idea.
funding that flows directly to the city. On a long-term basis, maybe our property taxes and sales taxes that we are able to levy, are able to support city services. I think the greatest concern is the direct impact of the project itself during the construction phase and the new services that are going to be brought to or demanded in our town.
Follow up, Senator Wilkowski.
That's fear. Some of that is fear, and it could very easily be only fear. It could be good management. You could be like, hey, you know what? There's some legitimate concerns that we have here. We're going to have some additional costs in A, B, C, and D, right? So it's not fear when you put it down on paper and you assign a dollar figure to it. It doesn't have to be accurate at this point. It just has to be an estimate. We're logically, reasonably assessing that there is this dollar figure associated with this cost. Now it's no longer fear, it's rational. Mr. Eubank has put an argument thus far in this last 5-minute conversation of there's fear that we're going to have some costs that were unforeseen, right? Let's figure this out. Let's start putting things down on paper and put a process in place by which the city can go to the project and say, look, these are the costs that we're being. Anyway, I'm repeating myself. Rewind it 30 seconds a minute and you'll get my suggestion.
I mean, I guess not to belabor the point, but you have no leverage with no disrespect, but your community has no leverage with Glenfarne. They if this project were to go forward, they would owe you nothing. And
so you can grant them leverage there, Mr. Lawyer, Mr. Senator Lawyer. You can grant them leverage. You just create the program. You create the statute that creates the program that says, hey, there's going to be a compensation program, and they submit this. They work this out. And if Glenfarne doesn't deal with it, then you have to go to court. I don't want to go in that direction, but it's preferable to allow Glenfarne the opportunity to do the right thing than it is forcing a bureaucracy to tell them what has to be done. Like that's just going to add cost. Kevin's got a good point here. What happens if the city ends up making bank because there's lots of people that come in? More sales tax. It's a net positive, right? We covered all of our expenses. There was no reason to fear. We've got plenty of money. Does the city then reimburse the state? Does the city help with the costs at the state level? Zero impact to the state budget. All of the revenue that's generated at the local level through a sales tax or property tax benefit boon because of the activity, none of that goes to the state for any trooper costs, right? So point is, and Kevin's making a good point here, if there's a net positive impact to the local municipalities, the expectation does not exist that the local municipality shares that with state or other entities, right? They're gonna benefit from it, and they're gonna keep it all. Again, this is this is why I'm saying that if you look from the perspective of incentives, if you want to incentivize the state government to care about economic activity in the city of Kenai or in the city of Palmer or in the city of Anchorage, then you need to have some tie to the money decisions that happen for those activities. Whatever the impact is, it needs whatever the options are that you could be doing to promote something or to stymie something, economic activity, growth of some sort. Okay. If there's a monetary increase in your city or in your state or your borough, then the decision makers care about that. We don't have that in the state of Alaska. It is a complete disconnect from the non-oil economy. And this is why I keep pointing back to this. We have a gift in this permanent fund earnings and dividend program that brings permanent fund earnings. It ties the worldwide economy to our local economy. Money comes from earnings of investments through the dividend program. It gets spent in your local economy. That's good for local economy. It's good for sales tax for the city. It's good for sales tax for the borough. It's good for business owners. Has nothing to do with the state government because there's no sales tax, no state sales tax. So the economic activity, this guy here, he doesn't care about it because it doesn't exist. There's no benefit. The only way that he can benefit from those dollars is to intercept them before they come to you. Intercept them and keep them at the state level so he can use them for state functions. That means the business doesn't get the benefit. You don't get the benefit. I digress, but since we're on the subject of making sure that we cover expenses and what is the proper structure to put in place to cover those expenses, a blanket basing it on population or miles of pipeline is not it. It's not it.
As current law stands, and so you have no negotiating power at this point. They don't have to give you anything at all, and so and that goes for all the local communities, the Moose Passes, the Soldotnas. If the pipeline or the project doesn't touch the community, then absent the state taking some action to compel them, it would appear to me like there's no leverage for local communities to get revenue for, even though they could be impacted tremendously. Maybe that's a comment more than a question, but
Senator Wilkowski, that's exactly why Mr. Eubank and others were invited today. Mayor Verhagen from Nenana was unable to join us. I don't see
This is not a problem for you, the state, to solve through additional bureaucracy. I can see the smoke coming out of your ears. You're trying to use this as justification for your own solutions. The state needs to take a step back, not a step forward. It needs to take a step back. It needs to say, look, the state is not the correct entity to be managing this. We can set up the requirement and the leverage that gives the local municipalities the ability and Glenfarne or the project the requirement to deal with these municipalities. They submit legitimate costs, and the project needs to cover them, flat out. In some arrangement, okay? Be creative about this. All you have to do is create it in statute, legislature pass it, and now that's what the entities have to deal with. You want to arbitrate? Well, that gets done in the courts. Nobody wants to go to court, so let's avoid that and work together. This is what negotiation's all about. The city and the borough can be trusted to do this. My opinion.
City manager of Seward or Whittier was able to make it either, but those are other communities that are going to be impacted. So we can hope to hear from them at another time. But these are important questions. Senator Myers.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Eubank, I'm curious. In the past, I don't know how long you've been in office, but in the past, if there's been large-scale development in the area but outside of the city limits that has impacted you, has the borough?
You mean back in the 70s?
Stepped in to transfer some money or assist with services in other ways, lending over some EMS or something along those lines to help out?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Great question to the chair. I've been with the city 18 years, with the Kenai Borough 10 years prior to that, and I'm not aware of any project, certainly of this magnitude, like what you're describing.
He has not been the city manager for 18 years.
I hear stories of when large-scale development took place in Nikiski, when they built the fertilizer plant out there and some of the other industrial complex, that some of those companies actually physically built some of the subdivisions in the city of Kenai. They built the housing for the workers that were not only there for construction, but for also that were going to operate it once placed in service. So it's the companies that specifically did that, but I'm not aware of any situations where revenue has flowed through the borough to the municipalities like you're describing.
Okay.
Follow up, Senator Myers?
Actually, I've got a question for Ms. Kawasaki since she's
yes.
Here. So with the distributions that we're talking about in here being on a per capita basis, does that mean that we could, with our unique borough city structure, we could end up double counting some people? Fairbanks, you've got the city and then the borough. Matsu, you've got at a minimum, you got Houston, Willow, Wasilla along, pretty close to the route. Kenai, as we're mentioning, we've got Kenai, Soldotna, and Nikiski. Could we end up double counting people in that way?
For the record, Sonia Kawasaki, Senate Majority Counsel. Senator Myers, thank you for the question through the chair. That is actually an interesting question, and I would have to defer to DCCED again for how the community assistance program is managed, because I did wonder about that because of my own hometown, Fairbanks. I live in city limits, and I know that the borough, we're contained in the borough, and that is a curiosity of mine as well. So we'll have to get to the bottom of that for you, Senator.
Okay, thank you.
We have to go ask the bureaucracy. Just to be clear, for all you that may be wondering, since Nikiski is a census designated place, it isn't a city. The residents in Nikiski, they don't get a say. We gotta go through Peter Michicki, and the borough mayor has the borough mayor and the assembly to trust that they're going to take care of us. Yeah. We had a road service area that took care of our roads out there, and we paid property tax into our own road service area. And then the borough said, look at all that money that you're getting because of all the property tax base that you've got with the so we're going to make it a borough wide road service area. Bam, there goes your money. Now it's spread all over the borough. So I, as the resident of Nikiski, do I have hope that the borough's actually going to take care of Nikiski, or are they going to take care of the population centers in Kenai and Soldada? I mean, more votes there than there are in Nikiski, right?
Good. Further questions for Mr. Eubank? Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Eubank, for joining us. Helpful information. And if you do have any thoughts or suggestions, we're open to your input. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair.
As I said, Kate Sorensen, City Manager of Seward, Jackie Wild, City Manager of Whittier were not available. We'll have them at another time. I did want to let the committee know we did reach out to Mayor Pawcatuck, Mayor Hopkins, and Mayor Michicki, none of whom were available today. Senator Dunbar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It did occur to me, I don't know if they have a mayor or a city manager, but does the community of Nikiski have anyone that we could hear from at some point? That is where the plant is physically going to be. I'd like to hear from them if I could.
Yes, I will check into that. I don't think, again, I had that as part of my district, and I don't remember there was a city government
a
for
community
Nikiski,
council.
but I will check into that.
Roger.
And that would be good to have him.
As a
He-
child,
he or she.
I knew it mostly for its water park.
Gotcha. Yes, the water park. Yes, very good. All right. So that ends the community.
That is maintained by a service area, taxes, property taxes from residents in Kenai or Nikiski.
Community officials that were invited to speak today. I also invited the Department of Natural Resources to join us. And we have Derek Nottingham. He's the acting Deputy Commissioner for DNR, and Weston Nash, Commercial Analyst, Division of Oil and Gas, Department of Natural Resources. One of the requests that I had made to them was to provide us with a map that would actually show where the municipal borders were, the borough borders and the cities and so forth, but also the unincorporated areas of the state, which the state of Alaska would be responsible for overseeing, that we're responsible for overseeing. They were not able to produce that map in such a short time. So that will be forthcoming. But in the meantime, if there were any questions for them, I actually have two. So I'll start out with my two questions if you think of any others. Acting.
Oh, okay. All right. We can cover that another day. We got through what I wanted to get through. Okay, some personal questions here that I got to answer. Scrolling back up, I think that it is Rick. You are asking, and you asked a question up. I'm scrolling back up real quick. Something about what I would do on committee. Okay, back an hour ago, I think. Yeah, almost an hour ago. You said, Ben, how would you react? How would you react if you were on this committee? Would you be nice like Rob, or would you be outspoken and question everything? I have done a little of both. I have done a little bit of both. I have asked questions of sparingly. I have asked questions of testifiers. Normally, especially when it's just citizens calling in, I'm in listen mode and I don't argue or ask questions of the testifiers. This would be an instance where since you're dealing with another government agent, a representative, a mayor, or a city manager, questions would be appropriate. And I would like to say that if I'm smart enough on the fly here to have these questions, then I would be asking them. There is the dynamics, interpersonal relationship and interpersonal things here, where if you monopolize the time on the committee, then you can see how that would get hard with relationships around the room and in the building. Right. So you have to use discretion. lots of questions, especially in the minority. You can ask really good questions, but only until the chair gets frustrated with you and won't call on you. So you have to be tactful about it. So I have pushed back. I'm not scared to do that. But I would also say that there's a time and a place for it. And if I've got 10 questions, I may only be able to get 1 or 2 of them asked in a committee meeting like this. Maybe I can get all 10, but again, I know how to get a hold of the people that are there, and I would go get the answers that I would need after the committee meeting. If I wasn't able to get them asked, then I'd go get the answers some other way. But the worst thing, I mean, very sparingly do you really need to get in people's face in the committee meeting and get aggressive, and it usually doesn't turn out well, and it's, long term, it's not your best play. So that's kind of the nature of the legislature, is people's feelings get hurt really easy. They got really thin skin. You'd think that because they're politicians, they got thick skin, and maybe they do with you. But that skin will turn really thin when it's another legislator. They'll hold a grudge in a heartbeat. So you really do have to be strategic and tactful. It's the game. It's the game that gets played. So yeah, I would say I would be asking hard questions and good questions. What I'm suggesting now is it would be a complete rewrite of a portion of the bill. So I get my opportunity as a minority member, because I'm not likely to be a majority member with these people. As a minority member, I get my opportunity to write an amendment to the bill, and then I get to sell my amendment. But that majority is not going to accept my amendment. Not unless you've got a bunch of support from the mayor and people calling in and whatever. I mean, I'm throwing out something that I think is very logical and common sense. Just let the municipalities, by statute, work with the project owner and require the owner to work with the municipalities and tell the state to go pound sand somewhere else. Like, you got plenty of other things to worry about. This dealing with the costs of things that have not been covered yet is something that the local governments can be trusted to deal with, right? These people in this committee are not going to want to. They're not going to want that, because they don't want to lessen the state's power. So anyway, that's kind of how I would approach the particular recommendation that I'm bringing forward, which is just allow the cities to take care of things by themselves. Hope I answered your question on that. Whoops, I need to take that off there you go. Let's see. I thought the mill rate, Christopher says, I thought the mill rate is equal across the board for all cities. So you've got a borough mill rate, and I'm speaking of the Kenai Peninsula Borough. You got a borough property tax mill rate, and then you've got a city property tax mill rate. Talking 2 different jurisdictions. Borough mill rate's got to be same mill rate across the board. City needs to be the same, but they don't have to be the same as the borough. So hope that helps. Yeah, how to kill a legacy project that will benefit Alaskans for generations by your corporate, that's city or borough, greed. Yeah, that is a true statement. But Kevin, if we're talking, hundreds of thousands of dollars to cover costs in the meantime, it's either the project cover it or you and I cover it. And that's fine if you're wealthy and you've got the money to cover it with additional property taxes. But those of us who aren't wealthy and would have to pay more in property taxes for this project for 10 years, you can see how we would balk at that. Like that is something that the project should cover as a cost of doing business to build the project. And it is not the largest cost. It's not even by far even close to the largest portion of the project. It is de minimis in the overall scheme of the cost of the project. And let me make the argument that it is only de minimis when you are able to ascertain or detail out the legitimate expenses that need to be covered. That, in my opinion, is not greed. Saying that you need money for roads because there's trucks driving through and you don't maintain the road, that's greed. You're trying to pull a fast one. City of Kenai is not talking to anybody about the fact that there's probably going to be a water pipeline built between the City of Kenai water system and the project because they need more water. City's going to make money off of this project through that arrangement, right? Fear in Nikiski is that that's going to give the City of Kenai some leg in to annex Nikiski or parts of Nikiski into the City of Kenai. And you can bet Nikiski ain't so fond of being incorporated into the Kenai. So not all of the conversations that are happening at the local level are being shared here at the state level. I mean, now they are. I put the cat out of the bag here, but who's going to pay the costs? I mean, that's a legitimate question that the legislature doesn't tackle and doesn't deal with on a regular basis. But if and this is it's a hypothetical. This is why I think it's a legitimate conversation that needs to happen at the local level. If you think you're going to have some expenses, then those need to be detailed. They don't need to just be hypothetical. And that's where we need to get to. If the state was wanting to help keep the costs down for the project, which there's no evidence that that's what they want. But if you did, then you wouldn't be going to a per mile or per capita basis. Because how do you know that per mile or per capita is the number that you actually need to cover the costs? And again, we're just talking about prior to the AVT taking place. We're just talking about during construction. How do we know that those structures are the right sum of money? We don't. We have no idea. It's just a metric. It's just a way to come up with a dollar figure. And all I'm suggesting is that you can create those statute that says come up with the actual cost and a program, a process by which that actual cost gets covered. And I would bet you that those costs, because they're going to be managed at the local level, are going to be far less costly for the overall project than a per mile or a per capita blank check or blanket check because of those metrics. Force the during the construction phase, force the conversation to actually deal with the actual costs. And that's how you get control of the costs and a lower cost of overall of the project. Yeah, I doubt that this bill is going to get pulled, but it can get amended, and it can be amended in the next committee too. So whatever this obtuse group of people doesn't do, you might have an opportunity to do it in finance. I don't think Senator Giesel is going to kill the bill. I think she wants this bill to move forward. It's her bill. It seems clear to me that she's at least telegraphing that she's willing to hear from borough managers, mayors, city, municipal managers here about ways to solve this problem. I think there are a number of those lower entities that have communicated that they want a direct relationship with Glenfarne, and I think the state ought to enable that. Kevin, you've got no argument in this program. I have been speaking for several days now about this particular committee's penchant for defining value of the project as how much can the state make in the form of tax revenue. And thus far, Senator Meyer's conversation about, or a question about and this is a question back to Fairbanks. What is it that lower cost gas would do for you in Fairbanks? There's the first time in days that we've had a conversation about what the pipeline's how it's going to benefit the private economy, and this was specifically to the Fairbanks economy. But yeah, I think Alaskans would be, if Alaskans have the choice of saying we can have higher revenue or higher gas prices. More state revenue means we have to pay higher gas prices, as my gas bill is going to be higher. Or I can have a lower gas bill, but the state gets less revenue. This is a no-brainer. Like, present that to the public for November. You choose. This is your choice. Do you want the state to get more taxes and you pay more on your gas bill, or do you want the state to get less taxes and you pay less on your gas bill? Which is it? Which do you want? Guarantee which way that goes. Alaskans would be like, yeah, get me low cost gas. That's what I want. That's not what these people are thinking. Rick, if you live in Wasilla, you would know. If they're on the highway, and I'm thinking about the times that I've gone to the fair, the state fair, which is not in Wasilla, I get it. Which direction are they going? On the little small spaghetti interchange you got there, right? You go to Palmer or go to Wasilla. Are all the trucks going through Wasilla? Okay. Well, that's the same thing as saying they're going through Kenai. Wasilla doesn't maintain the road that those trucks are going to be traveling on. It is highly unlikely that they're stopping in Wasilla to get gas, but maybe they do. I don't know. So they pull off the off ramp, they go to the local gas station there, and they turn around, they go get back on the highway, and on the state maintained highway, and then they head north, right? I mean, Wasilla itself is not picking up the tab for trucks transiting through Wasilla on the state highway. They're not picking up the cost of that. Now, if the truck's got to overnight or drive through a neighborhood for some reason, right? I mean, then there's a additional cost that the city may pick up. But just driving through, like I said with Kenai, that's not legitimate in my mind. How are Seward and Whittier? Kevin wants to ask. Well, yeah, Whittier. Well, the only way that those would be impacted are if the docks in either of those two locations are receiving supplies and equipment that need to go to the project. And the only reason that they would be doing that is because the dock that they're supposed to be building to receive goods and supplies for the project there in Nikiski, for some reason is not usable or it's backlogged or something. They got to go somewhere else. So then, and it could be either all three, right? The Anchorage port, it's not going to do the Port Mac because it doesn't exist, right? I know. Hope you guys get your port up and running. Hope there's an economy to support this, or get it running and then they'll build an economy, right? I'm not against the Port of McKenzie. Is that, am I saying that right? Anyway, so it comes in Anchorage, it comes in Whittier, it comes in Seward. Can't really come in Homer. So that's it. I mean, you know that. That's why those two cities. And then if it's coming from Seward, then you've got Moose Pass, and you got Cooper Landing. All of those communities would have trucks transiting through their community. And again, those communities don't maintain the road. It's a state maintained road. So I don't see, other than having lots of traffic and being inconvenienced, I don't see how they would pick up additional cost. What would be additional cost perhaps is having additional troopers on the road. And if the trucks are causing accidents, then you would have emergency responders showing up at an increased rate, right? So again, those are to the state. And what's the process for the state receiving money in the first 10 years or during the interim? Maybe the state's got a bigger checkbook and it doesn't need to worry about that. I don't know. Local communities don't. Yeah. I think what you heard now is if you could make an argument that you need to be in the take here, that any municipality could show up and have their hand out. But again, I think that you should have to submit your requests like legitimate expenses. So Kaktovik and St. Mary's probably don't have legitimate expenses tied to this project. So they would not, in my mind, in the law that the way that I would craft it, they wouldn't be eligible. Anderson, you say, huh? Pipeline's going to run directly adjacent to Anderson. Is Anderson a city, or is that a wide spot in the road, like a census designated place? I don't know whether it's a city, it's got its own mayor, or anyway. Yeah, I mean, all of those municipalities that they think they're going to have expenses. This is why I'm being realistic here. Anybody can call into the legislature today and say, "Oh, we're going to have expenses." You just got to know, like, we're in solidarity here, right, Senator Giesel? We're going to have expenses, and we need that gas company to pay us for our expenses. So go ahead and put this project in place and allow Department of Community Economic Development, allow the bureaucracy to take requests for money, right? That's the worst way to do this, because anybody can come up with some fear-based demand of how they're going to need money. But when the rubber meets the road and where the actual cost is being incurred, communicate that by statute. That's the statutory authority for you to communicate that to the project, and the project has the responsibility to cover the expenses, right? To me, that sounds reasonable. It's not greedy. It's either they cover it or the property tax or taxpayers, property owners cover it. Yeah, the rest of the world doesn't know, but Nikiski voted no a decade ago to not incorporate. So there was a push to create our own city out here. And at the time, the boundaries of the city was the boundaries of our service area. And it would have made it the largest city by geography in the state of Alaska. It would have been a big city. The reason that it was the boundary was to capture the tax revenue of the industry in the area. That's why we have our service areas the size that they are. Anyway, residents of Nikiski said, no, we don't want to incorporate. Don't want more government. Okay, well, now you don't have a seat at the table when there's a mega project coming in, and you're going to have to rely upon your one assembly representative. That's it. That's what you got. Rick, you're asking me if I'm going to call the Kenai manager. You mean to share with him my idea? Is that what you're asking? I don't know that I've ever met Rick Williams. You are Rick Williams. I don't remember if I've ever met the Kenai city manager. He's only been there for a couple of years. I don't know. Do I need to call him? Like I'm hoping that the message gets received at the legislature and somebody puts an amendment in the bill that takes this state-run what's the right word? I'm losing my words already. The compensation, state-run compensation. I like get rid of that. Anyway, I don't know that talking to the Kenai guy is going to matter. Craig, why should they? Think about this for a second. This is part of the problem, larger problem of the legislature, okay? And this isn't just a state legislature problem. This is the same problem in Congress. What do we elect our legislators to do? Whether they go to Juneau or go to Washington, D.C., what do we elect them to do? Most people elect them to go get money for our local areas. Even in deep red Nikiski, as soon as I get elected, somebody's like, "Hey, can we get some money, some state money? We'd really like to build a library for our community here, like a community library for a history, for the capture the history of the settlers of the area, the old timers. So could you get some grant money? Because we've always done that. We've always been able to get some grant money from the state for projects in our local area. Can you go do that?" I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, why don't you just fund that with your dividend? Because that's where it's coming out of, right? Like, there's at no time in me being in the legislature do we have we've got oil revenue coming out our ears where we can fund projects like that, right? Totally different mindset. But that's what the expectation is that your representative is going to Juneau or going to Washington, D.C., and it's going to bring home the bacon. So why would I care about other districts in the state? Why do I care about the state in general? All I need is to take care of me and my district and bring home money to my people. Why would they need to know anything about any place? Why would Ben Carpenter, representing the Northern Kenai Peninsula, need to care about the Port of McKenzie in the Mat-Su? Why would I care about that? Why would the people in the Mat-Su care about some port in Homer? This goes to the larger problem. The legislators that go down there are, by and large, they don't have this, how do we build the best, biggest state possible? We're not pulling together and saying, "Hey, if you've got your thing and I've got my thing and we've got all this and let's figure out a strategy." Oh man, there's so many things that we got to do. We can't all get them done this year. Maybe we can get this done this year, and then the prioritize this over here. We'll get this done next year. And we've got a 10-year plan for all of these projects, and they all fit in, right? Hell no, that's not going to happen. It is complete selfish behavior down there. I'm getting my thing this year, and I'm the top priority. The legislature's not thinking about how to make a better state. Maybe a couple people are, but most of the legislators are looking at their pie. Why? Because for the state house perspective, in 2 years, I want to come back and somebody's got to get me elected. So I got to show that I'm doing something, bringing home the money for my local district. For the senators, it's every 4 years. So you can get away with a little bit more in the first couple of years. But eventually you're putting bills forward and you're trying to do something so that your constituents are benefiting for what your time in the legislature. You're focused on what you can do for your part of the state. Now, theoretically, if you've got 60 legislators and everybody's thinking about their part and then you're working together, the entire state is being taken care of because there's self-interest within your part. And as long as I'm not having self-interest in somebody else's part and the people I'm representing are getting hung out to dry, it kind of takes care of itself because all of this self-interest works itself out. But I'm telling you, few and far between are the legislators that are having conversations about how do we build a comprehensive, better state. It's not a conversation. Like, I don't even know that I've had those conversations over beer. We're not thinking about that. This year, this budget, my projects, that's what we're thinking about. Except for those of us that are trying to put a long-term fiscal plan together. And that gets rewarded with let's not do that. I don't think I'm going to get elected, so let's not do that. All right. Which are you sick to your stomach over, Kevin? Is that my commentary or the committee? I'm not sure which you're referring to. You think this committee needs an overseer? Yeah, well, that's called the electorate. Good point here. The reason that Mark Begich was brought on, I think it was a good move. Theoretically, he's supposed to be able to schmooze the other D's in the legislature to get what the project needs to go forward, right? So hopefully that's happening in the behind the scenes here. Obviously, the Democrats on this committee have got to make a statement and stand their ground for as long as they can on the principles that they want to be held accountable for, right? They want people to recognize. At the end of the day, the project is going to go forward with the legislature's support, and it will die if the legislature doesn't support this, right? So fortunately, the people on this committee are largely going to wear that badge or that chain around their neck when it fails. We'll be able to point to this committee and say, look, you guys are the ones that dicked around with this for way too long. Asking stupid questions and not asking the right questions. You prioritized state government revenue over private sector economic growth. That's what you did. And you killed the project. Could upfront payments to the local governments be paid from federal loans? There's someone thinking outside the box. Let's go to the federal government and have them bail us out. I don't know. It's a good question. The money that I understand that's potentially coming, let's put it this way: the authority that's coming from the federal government and the recent activity from POTUS is going to make loan money available. It isn't, well, the largest sums of money are loan money available or backing loan money up, which is to say the government would underwrite the loans. I believe that there were some payments that could be made, some cash that could be brought to bear, but not the hundreds of billions of dollars. My understanding is not that. Meaning the federal government's not going to be able to take hundreds of billions and just plop it down and buy a project, right? It's through a loan process. But my gut tells me that what we're talking about here at the local level is not something that the federal government's going to get involved in, that they're going to cover the during project construction costs for local communities. I don't think that the federal, I could be wrong. Honestly, that would be a question for the representatives at the federal level, Senator Sullivan, Murkowski, or Nick Begich. I am unfamiliar enough to not know for sure, but I suspect that would not be something that the federal money would be used for. See you, Rick. Thanks for participating. I'm sure that Glenn Farn will be invited and have a conversation. Well, I'm not sure. I would assume that they are going to invite Glenn Farn to have a conversation about their CS. Yeah. Ben for president, huh? Kevin, maybe he's answering my question. This seems like such a simple economic argument. Low-cost gas comes from low-cost project. Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. Okay. Kevin says, not so not an impact fee if it is an inconvenience fee. Yeah, I think I would agree if I understand you. being inconvenienced is not something that I think this project from a guy who lives in Nikiski, I'm just expecting inconvenience is going to be my new middle name for the next 10 years until this thing's done, or how many ever years it's going to take, right? Inconvenience is what we're going to be. It's going to be Nikiski inconvenienced. That's the, we don't get to submit for that. Like, that's not a claimable expense. It's like pain and suffering. Can we get pain and suffering? Because I sure like my low cost gas, but I have more pain and suffering than everybody else. Can I get extra money for that? No. Why Homer? Homer should get paid for the ships that will sit in Catchback Bay waiting to offload. You've got a really small dock there. I don't think Homer's going to be part of this this project. I could be wrong, but I think most of the stuff that's coming off docks are going to Whittier or Seward, or the majority of it's going to come to the docks that don't exist yet, but will be built out here in Nikiski. Okay, thank you. Anderson is a city, so it's got a mayor and an organization. Okay. Yeah, Lynn says Nikiski better hurry up and incorporate. Maybe people could see the writing on the wall, but we're like those folks in Sterling. We live way out in the middle of nowhere for no reason, or for a reason, and it's to have no government, right? Even with the project coming in, I don't know that enough people would be voting to incorporate Nikiski. Seems weird that that's interesting. City of Papoose Twins. Would that be a joke, or is there a city of Papoose Twins? Like, could I have that on my business card? Mayor Papoose Twins, city of Papoose Twins. Anyway, I'm joking here. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I don't know. I think people keep to their own little, I mean, it just shows you that our worlds are really small. Most of us, at least the senators at that table. Giesel didn't speak up, but she used to represent Nikiski. So she spent plenty of time driving down through Soldotna and Kenai to Nikiski. I remember seeing her back in, I don't know what it was, 2014, 2016 timeframe as our senator down here. Let's see here. Oh, thank you, Kevin Grad. Yeah, you've missed the other episodes where I don't have a smile on my face. Like, maybe you didn't miss them. Maybe I'm presuming too much. But a couple days ago, I'm like, no smile, red face. This committee has been hard to watch. Like, it is straight up, we don't like this project, and we want to focus on this other project where those majors where Conoco, BP, and Exxon, they agreed to this stuff and blah, 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 and that project never happened. They didn't agree to squat. Those committee members are fixated on something that never happened, and they keep pointing to it to say, well, that's what we want. We want to incorporate that into this bill, right? You're like, there's a reason why that project never went forward back then. Anyway. Kevin, what do you say? There's actually a conduit bond, tax-free, available through AK Railroad that would save about $2 billion interest on $44 billion bond. Conduit bond. Huh. I know nothing about that, Kevin. Interesting. We should chat again. Not that matters if I know, but it sounds interesting. I don't know what it means. Kevin, have you followed I'm sure you have, President Trump did with his determination and what that means for Department of Energy, opening up hundreds of billions of dollars of money for LNG projects. I'm sure you guys have talked about it down there. What does this mean? Tankers sitting there, three to six ships. Are these the tankers that are going to the port of Anchorage and they're waiting for a pilot to take them up there? Or are they waiting to be offloaded at the dock in Homer? I don't think it's the dock in Homer. Like, if you're talking about big container ships or big ships, then it's obviously not the dock in Homer. That's the dock you guys want to build. Which is crazy to think about. Big ships, lots of containers being offloaded at the end of the spit and then having to travel the spit through town and up the hill. And little old Homer. I'm surprised that people there want to have that kind of a port down there. Oh, you can be the mayor and she can be the sheriff. Yeah, I believe that. Okay. Yeah, we talked about this, Kevin. I don't remember whether I said 18%. Yeah, we covered this in a previous show that the economics for the plan for the previous plan aren't the same economics here. But Kathy Giesel and Wielechowski are pointing to certain aspects of that past plan and saying, hey, well, the producers agreed to this already. So this is how we should approach this particular plan. And I'm like, first of all, that plan, those producers, they said, we quit. We're not going to do this. We're not going to partner with the state. There was no plan. So whatever tentative agreement that you thought that they made wasn't really an agreement because they didn't follow through with it. But yeah, that's exactly right. Is that the smaller company is able to have their economics mean that their profit margin or their ability to make money at a smaller rate is a benefit to this project. Waiting for space in Anchorage or Nikiski. Okay, so we're not just talking container ships there, Craig. You're talking about oil tankers, because that's the only thing that's docked in Nikiski. So they're either and I would say the oil tankers or some sort of fuel vessel goes to Anchorage too, because they provide fuel to the base. Marathon facility down here doesn't produce jet fuel or JP8 for the base for Elmendorf. So you would have them both. You'd have tankers going to both locations and cargo ships going to Anchorage. So yeah, that's what we're talking about. I knew that. All right. I don't know what's going to happen in the legislature tomorrow, but I would like to come back to this conversation about deferred maintenance, because I think it will help us understand deferred maintenance better than we do now. Now, before we go tonight, Craig, you asked a question. You said, why is Senate Resources 5 majority members and 2 minority members? Okay. I've got an answer for you. I had a feeling I understood at the time, but I couldn't communicate it. Here is the reason. Whoop, I need to find it. Ruh-roh. Okay, let me go a different direction here. I just need to share my screen, and this one here is in the way. Not that one. Okay, I know where to. Give me 1 second. 1 second. We'll have it here in just 1 second. Okay, this is what I want to share. Okay, so this is out of the uniform rules. And this is kind of counterintuitive, but it'll make sense when we talk about it. Okay, So this is minimum minority membership. So the size of the committees down in Juneau are determined by the size of the minority, not the size of the majority. Let me make this a little bigger. So when we're, oh, sorry about that. When we're talking about the Senate, if the minority is only 6, right? If it had 7 members, it would be different. But if it's only 6 and the size of the committee is a 7-member committee, then they only get 2 minority members on it. If they had 7 members in the size of the minority, the 7-member committee would still only have 2. You don't get a third person until for a 7-member committee until you have a minority of 9. You look at the House and you say you've got 19-member minority. For an 11-member committee, you've got 5 members on that committee. You lose 1 person and drop down to a 18-member minority, then you lose a seat on finance. That's how that works. So the size of the committees in the Senate, whether it's a 5-member committee, a 7, a 9, or 11, the numbers of seats are determined by the size of the minority. So for example, with a 9-member committee, there's only 2 members on it. The only way you're going to have 3 minority members in a Senate committee is with an 11-member committee. And then you've got 3. For a 9-member committee, if you had 1 more minority member, then you would have 1 more seat on that committee. You're still a minority, but you just have an additional seat. So in the uniform rules, that's how it breaks down, and that's why this is a page taken right out of the uniform rules binder. It's called Uniform Rule 1E right there. So that's how it's determined. Okay, that answers your question, I hope. So yeah, I mean, and that's the situation, because you've only got a handful, 5 or 6 members in your minority, of Republicans in the minority in the Senate, and the others, like, you've got a majority of the legislators in the Senate are Republicans, but the minority is the only caucus that has all Republicans. The other one has Democrats and Republicans. So those Republicans would rather work with the Democrats than work with the rest of the Republicans. I mean, it's the craziest thing. Craziest thing. Okay. Thanks for participating tonight. I hope this was helpful. Can't wait to hear what the rest of the mayors have to say. We'll see what happens with relation to either other committee substitutes or amendments. When amendments come up, now that they've taken public testimony, they may or may not take additional public testimony, but they could go through an amendment process and change things now that they've heard from the mayors. We'll see. We'll see. Okay, well, if you like the show and want to help support me, support the show, go to OversightLIVE.com. All of the episodes that are recorded here, you can find on that website. You can also go to YouTube, and they're stored there. Facebook's got them recorded there. X has got them recorded there. My website's the only place that you can support me if you would like to financially, and I would appreciate it. Thank you very much. We're going to be back tomorrow night, Thursday night. Yep. And we'll talk about deferred maintenance if there isn't something more pressing with regard to pipeline stuff. And then we can get into that. So, you know what? If I get reelected, then I can't do this, can I? Not very well. Like, I'd be tired. Imagine going a full day in the legislature and then sitting here for 2 hours with you all. Yeah, I haven't made any decisions. All right, we will we'll chat with you later. Thanks for joining me tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. Again, another plug. If there's something you want to see, if there's something a bill or a committee hearing or something you want to discuss, then drop me a line at producer@oversightlive.com, and we'll see if we can't make it happen. All right. Peace. Have a good night.